And this is why we invited Steve. It is time now for Money, Power, Politics. And as the Iran war enters its third month, we are once again asking the question that I ask almost every night on this show. Is this White House for sale? Question mark. According to Bloomberg, the U.S. Air Force has now agreed to buy an undisclosed number of interceptor drones from a company called PowerUs. But you can guess, who just happens to be major investors behind this company? The company is backed by none other than the president's two eldest sons, Eric and Don Jr. It is the first sale of this kind of weapon by PowerUs to the U.S. military. And when pressed on the scrutiny that could come with the deal, the company's president just said this. They are not going to pick a system because of who's on the investor list. They're picking because they need it now. End quote. The company also said there are no conflicts of interest, and Trump's sons say they are merely private businessmen. Okay, then, the nightcap is still here. Steve, the Trump family has expanded into rare earths, into AI defense technology, obviously into crypto. Don Jr. has framed his firm's investments as, what does he call it? What does he call it? Hold on, I have it. Patriotic capitalism. In all of your years as an economist covering business, have you ever even heard the term or the asset class, patriotic capitalism?
No.
Wow.
I mean, there's nothing to say. I mean, it's so obvious, it's so patent, it's so... They're not even trying to conceal it.
But you used to cover Russia. You lived in Moscow. There's a lot to say.
And the Russians were more careful about this. If you can believe it, they used to have like a protocol for when they gave a bribe, you know? You would go in and you'd put the money on the table and you'd make a request, and then if they took the money and opened their drawer and put it in the drawer, they were accepting the bribe. But nothing was ever said about that.
Now they're investing in the companies and doing TV interviews talking about it.
I remember when the Russians did a fake auction of an oil company to one that was bought by a friend of the president. They went so far as to have a fake bidder to make it so it was an auction.
God bless
them. But the Trump administration doesn't really seem to care. They do this business with the crypto, and they do this business with the president's son having a contract with the Defense Department is just, I don't know, it's outrageous. Where would you even begin to build a foundation of a moral structure where that is okay?
In the first term, it was actually an ethical issue that Kellyanne Conway did an interview on 60 Minutes where she said how much she liked her bracelet, and it came from Ivanka's brand. Mm-hmm. That's where we were, and the country or politicians or ethics officials were outraged about this in 2017. And welcome to 2026, where Don Jr. is an advisor to both Kalshi and Polymarket.
And what about Hunter Biden, who made a phone call?
I was going to say
something like that. I mean, we're outraged by that.
Now Trump didn't even have his cabinet sign the ethics guidelines, number one. Number two...
And he fired all the IGs.
He fired all of the inspectors general.
The people who follow you. Yeah. Do they know? Are they aware? Do they care?
Okay, voters can understand the corruption that happens in politics, but the problem that we run into is they think that there's corruption on all sides, which there is. Yeah. There is corruption on all sides, but for Democrats, it's like a grain of sand on the beach, if you want to point to stock trading by certain Democrats, versus the $3 billion reported that Trump has gained in crypto thus far. So the average American does understand it. The average voter does understand it, but they don't get the size, scope, and the scale of the Trump admin's pure corruption. We should be talking more about the fact that Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, was able to get executive power and gut the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which protected the average American. So we are being screwed over by the people in the highest echelons as they get richer and richer and richer, and Americans can feel that. Americans are smart. They've got an intuitive sense of it.
While the Wall Street Journal is mulling a reboot of The Apprentice potentially being hosted by Don Jr. Amazon, right? The company founded by Jeff Bezos, who cares about Amazon, obviously, but who really, really cares about his giant money-losing behemoth space company, Blue Origin, that's light years behind SpaceX and really needs to win favors with this administration.
I mean, it doesn't shock me because they also paid for a documentary about Melania. Like,
$50 million.
This is the price of doing business right now. But here's what's always problematic about corruption, because you can have corruption and still occasionally be efficient. You can have corruption and still occasionally get something done. The thing that's particularly bothersome about Trump's sons being involved in this new drone deal. Do you know the most advanced country in the world right now when it comes to drone deals? Ukrainians.
Yep.
And this is the same administration that's trying to not give them money. Yep. If there was one way that you wanted to try to cut a deal, it would be, hey, Zelensky, What are you guys doing?
Send a
How can we
couple
put this together?
scientists over
Send some
here.
of
And
your
military
scientists.
officials have been clear about the fact that they have watched what's happened in Ukraine and said, that's great, we should do that.
Yes, but instead, you're throwing money into your son's pockets. And that's what makes it so particularly problematic. And here's the thing. Yes, everybody sees corruption on all sides. That's part of why that message has always been difficult to get to people. Yeah. You can explain, oh my gosh, these guys are double dipping. But when everyone thinks, well, I bet you there's a Democrat that does it, or I just saw this thing about Fetterman, that's why it doesn't resonate. Unfortunately, people are still not going to see corruption as something that takes money out of their pockets unless it's a specific policy.
Sheila Sher-Phyllis McCormick is now, running for re-election, but not going to be in the House because she stole millions of dollars from FEMA, right? It is happening on both sides. The problem is that it is so bald-faced in the way that the Trump administration is doing it. And the other piece of it is that the people who are saying, wait, this is not how we should be doing things, happen to be Democrats. And so then it becomes, oh, well, Democrats are just against the president, when in fact, this should be like a good faith effort to root out corruption from within government apparatuses, because this is not the way that the American government has ever done business.
The problem journalistically is, over the years, I found that if a story doesn't have resonance in the public domain, in the public square,
it disappears.
Dies. Yeah. So you can do, and I remember a huge investigative story in Sarasota of this insurance scam that was going on, and it just fell flat, and it died. If these stories are not picked up in Congress, if somebody doesn't do something about it, it will die. And then the danger is that we become benumbed to this notion of, oh, it's just happening out there. And you wonder why the kids these days are socialist.
Some of them. Don't point at me.
I'm not pointing at you. I'm just saying. I have some cousins and nephews.
Okay,
totally right.
Steve was getting dark and sad. We're going to change that in the next segment. When we return, it is time for the MVPs of the week.